welcome to another ONYXCON Exclusive. I am Joseph R. Wheeler III, the artist, founder, and president of ONYXCON, and I'm here today with none other than Mr. Neville Page. Let me give a little background on who this is for those who don't realize how amazing this man is. Neville Page is a British-American film and television creature and concept designer. Born in England, he was raised in Manchester and Chicago, Illinois. He was inspired by science fiction, including Star Wars, and makeup artist Rick Baker's work in An American Werewolf in London. Page moved to Hollywood at the age of 17 and gained roles as an actor. And on and on and on, but we'll get into that later. But I think that gives the just appreciation.
That's all you need to know.
And I will definitely note that this is the man who's heavily behind the new character designs and many of the ship designs for Star Trek, as far as the movies and the new series Discovery, which is incredible. He was also part of Prometheus. He was part of Tron Legacy, and this little thing called Avatar. So I think that gets him in the right headspace for who we're talking to today. So that's my applause for everybody else who will be applauding when they see this.
I think I hear it.
Yeah, you know.
Yours. That's all I need. Thank you.
So Neville, let's start with, British American. So were you born in Britain or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Born in Manchester. I moved to the States about 5 years old.
Okay.
And went straight to Chicago, mostly because, I didn't have a choice at 5, But my dad, I was going to say still is a musician.
Okay.
Percussionist.
And I relate.
Pardon?
I say I relate. I don't play set and all that, but I do play various forms of percussion.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, he's actually moved on to djembe
nice.
drums. He really loves his percussion, particularly a lot of old Irish and African references, which is really cool. I was very fortunate to be in a family such as my father and my mom, because my mother was also a dancer in theater, and that's how my parents met. Was basically in a production of, I think it was Goldilocks, I might be wrong, in London. And and they met, and my father was all over the map, and as you are when you're a musician, you go where the work is.
Yeah.
And he ended up in the circus, like a classic old, it's a train full of characters and animals and tents. And they set it up, they play their music. My dad, being a percussionist, was probably the busiest of the band members, because how many drum rolls do you need during a circus act? And the drum roll thing came from being in the Queen's Guards. He was one of the Queen's Guards Irish Brigade, because that's where he's from Dublin.
Now, those are guys that stand at the gates and completely still and all of that?
The ones with the tall bearskin hats.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a very colorful background to my family. And that's relevant only to the fact that I was fortunate to be raised in a family that came from entertainment and theater. So they already embraced the idea of being involved in entertainment in some capacity. So family moved to Chicago because jazz, and there was more work there. And my father's parents had moved to Chicago in the 70s, early 70s, I guess. So we all ended up in Chicago. And it was, I'm 5 years old, so I don't know what's good or bad. Everything is good when you're 5, hopefully.
Right.
And it was definitely inner city, multicultural. My first day.
What part of Chicago?
It was right by Wrigley Field.
Okay.
So it was.
And I don't know Chicago, but I'm just saying that for all the people who are from there who'd be like, oh yeah.
Yeah. If you know Lakeview High School, we were just blocks away from Lakeview High School on Addison and Ashland.
Okay.
And kind of like between that and Wrigley Field. So if you think of that in the 70s, for those that know it, you'll be like,
right.
It was there were gangs, there were stabbings, there was needles and chains and knives in the schoolyard on a Monday morning when you go back to school. Not all the time, but it was definitely, you know, my sister and I, we wouldn't always tell my parents what we saw, what we experienced, because, you know, you're kind of afraid to tell your parents when there's a gang fight or there's drugs in your school and stuff. But again, that was the norm growing up. I didn't see it as, oh my gosh, this is really scary and bad. It was kind of like, yeah, you get streetwise, you are mindful, you're careful.
Right.
My first day of school, I came home. Keep in mind, I still have my British accent at this point.
Okay.
My first day of school, I come home with a button that a kid gave me who I really liked first day, and it said, "I'm proud to be Puerto Rican." And that's me as a kindergartner coming home with my Manchester accent. My parents like, well, he's integrating fast. He might be okay.
Oh man. So the kid who gave you the button, they were Puerto Rican and they thought you were Puerto Rican?
They didn't think I was. We're all kids, you know, so it was, nobody really looked at each other, which is so contemporary now, but we didn't look at each other for the color of our skin. It was just like, who's this interesting kid in a pair of shorts, you know, leather shoes, high socks, and a blazer? I'm slightly exaggerating, but it's not far from the truth.
Okay.
And a weird accent. So I was just unusual enough to not get my butt whooped a lot. And I ran very fast. It turns out I had long legs.
That's what's up.
It helped. But it was the coolest thing. I don't often get to chat about it, but I think that this conversation at some point will go that direction. But
that's all good. I love to get background.
Well, I've been asked this recently, which is why it's on my mind and topical. Okay. And that was, of course, about race, et cetera. And growing up in Chicago, inner city, you got all colors. Right. You got plenty of people who are not documented. And I remember the guy's name, Arturo. He was this little Mexican kid who was always picked on, and which is a shame. But there was a lot of color in the school. And my very first kiss was with a girl named LaTanya Jackson. I bet you can guess her color.
All right.
And again, it wasn't the scariest thing about kissing this girl was kissing a girl. You know, it wasn't like this is taboo,
right?
Or she is black, and there are things that you need to consider, Neville. You know, engaging in this romance. No,
right.
She was awesome, and I liked her, and we had a kiss, and it was, you know, silly and ridiculous because I think I was 10 maybe. but those are the important things. And I remember my talking to my family about my girlfriend, who was a black girl, and it didn't come up that it was just not a topic. It was a non-issue. Yes, there was racism at the time, of course, but you know, if I kissed a guy, I would like to think that my parents would have also thought, let's not make this an issue, because it isn't. But that's the world I was kind of exposed to and raised in, and I consider it a blessing. You know, whether I was born with a certain predisposition to I don't want to even say be. The term colorblind, we know, is a sensitive thing, but to not be prejudiced in any way. Am I born that way? Was I raised that way? Maybe it's a combination of both. And I believe that it's definitely, you know, it starts at home, as I've indicated in my social media recently. And it's such a vital thing. As soon as, you know, if my parents were to say, you probably shouldn't be with that girl, the seed has been planted. Right. And as we know, society has plenty of water to help that seed grow. Right. So it's so important what you plant at a young age. Anyhow, I'm sort of going off topic.
Right. We were definitely going to go there. I was going to open up the floor and, you know, I always do that nowadays anyway, just to allow everybody to vent so that it doesn't come up oddly in the middle of some other question. we can just we can deal with as my last guest said, I said the elephant in the room. She said, no, the mammoth in the room. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
a mastodon, she said, yeah.
yeah.
So, that was Tony Taylor, amazing artist. But yeah, I mean, that's totally true. And, it's a situation where I'm one who always says, I understand the concept of colorism, but I always get to the point of knowing where it all starts and the fact that race is a construct created societally, and then there's genealogy and who we really are as a whole as human beings. It's like, when you really get into it like that, I'll never forget, there was an artist, I forget who this artist was, but it was a book that I found back in the 90s, and it was a photo study of this artist took all these photos of people, men and women, and everybody had to shave all their hair off, all their facial hair if they were men. If women had hair, everybody was bald. And the whole point he was trying to show was, he would juxtapose people who say a dark-skinned black man next to a very pale white guy, but their features are so similar. It's like all you got to do is cross the color, and you still got this almost the same person. So, I don't get into that as much. I get more into, what we as tactile artists, because I'm an artist myself, visual artist, and then I became an actor and stuff. I understand. I've always understood and could feel that in your art. And I want to say that to your face because I want to say that because I'm so proud to know of any artist like yourself who, when I look at their work, I can tell they understand features, true color, texture, form, what makes artists like us tick, what makes us get into what we do, and going beyond, like, if you're really, like I know you said on your one of your social media posts too that you've been teaching for over 20 years, and when you share with kids how to deal with color and complexion, you give them a crayon pack that has every range from the darkest to the lightest, and it's like, I was like, that's a real teacher. Because in my experience of teaching from kids all the way to adults, you got so many psychological issues with that. Because like you said, those seeds get planted. Like I work with young kids all the way to seniors before I stop teaching. And one of my biggest frustrations with working with the seniors, especially my own folks culturally, because here's the other thing. When I say black, I speak of cultures, plural. There's no one mono blackness, you know what I'm saying? There are black people who would identify as black that do things I wouldn't do. There's black people who would do things I would do. There's, and on and on and on. So, and the same for anybody else. So that's how I look at that. And when you get into the complexion thing, anybody who's a real artist, it's the biggest joke to any of us when somebody says, oh, you're this color, you're that color. Like, it may not show up on camera right now, but like my tan is so rich right now for me. This is both me. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's a total joke to me when you start talking about color. It's like, man, whatever. It really gets into culture and people trying to control each other and know that they can't control somebody they don't understand. Simple as that. I don't understand you. I don't think I ever want to. So let me figure out a way to control you. Because you're not with my agenda. You know? Point blank.
We've all been hearing people say, white people say, the good ones, the ones with good intentions. I don't see color, and I don't really understand why it is the way it is. And I think the what's coming out of that is everyone has to look in the mirror, not at their skin color, but just like face themselves and really ask the question. Not so much, am I racist? Because kind of if you are racist, that's a tough thing to fix, right? Depending on your age too. But to ask yourself, what am I doing that is a little racist? What am I doing that's propagating it that I was never aware of? And I think that's one of the good things coming out of this. One of the many good things is that people are actually going, hey, maybe I'm one of those. Not any different than the Me Too movement, which also is not over and should not be forgotten. But I would hope that the Me Too movement made a lot of guys look in the mirror and go, what have I been doing to basically add to that in a negative way? And there's a lot of guys that would think, well, I never forced a woman to have sex with me. I never slapped some girl on the butt at the office, so I guess I'm okay. Oh, no. There's way more subtle things that you have to be mindful of. And I think that the most important thing, and this is including art, a lot of the things that I've been teaching, I've discovered that in art, I've discovered are metaphors for life and are very applicable. And the most important thing would be you need to be open to being wrong so that it allows you to grow. And that's a scary thing for a lot of people, because people tend to, and I guess myself included, you want to have conviction in something. It's almost like I have a belief and I will now believe it without question, because it allows me to kind of just settle back and go, I believe in God, therefore he's got my back. Or I believe in Allah, and therefore he's got me covered. Or I don't believe in any of that, and therefore I know more than these people. And I think everyone who has conviction in religion should be open to the possibility, dare I say probability, that you're wrong in some areas. And if you are that way, again, personal point of view,
No, it's all
if you are that way, then you allow yourself to grow. So my art, once you get to the point of, you know what, I'm pretty good at the pencil, whew, thank goodness for that. I don't really need to exercise anything else, because the pencil is it, and I've got control over it. I know what to do with it. I understand it. And somebody says, you should really try oil.
Right.
It scares me, and I don't get it, and I'm ignorant to it. Therefore, I don't like it. I hate oil paint. I hate oil-based clay.
And then, because I like where you're going with this, and then if somebody adds a status to oil, which we all know, in painting, it does have a status. If you do that, you're better than all the other medium painters.
Yeah.
And you can dictate to them, why you're better, and you create almost its own club of higher echelon that rules over the art world. So
digital painting versus wet media and oil media painting, it's transitioning. I'm from the world of design versus art, meaning that I'm using these tools to convey ideas. So for me, it is less about the medium. Is oil better than digital? It depends in what context. If you are working on a film production, digital is far better than oil, because you can't move as fast. It simply does not dry as quick as digital paint.
It's not happening.
The upside, though, is I've never painted on a canvas and in an instant it just disappears.
Right.
Your canvas can't crash. So there's good and bad to everything. The argument, which I find mostly ridiculous, no offense to both sides, but the digital visual effects are better or worse than practical effects, whether it be makeup or creature work or whatever. It's like, come on, man. There's bad visual effects out there. And there's amazing visual effects you have no idea that they are. And there's bad makeup and practical effects, and there's amazing. Pick the right tool. You're gonna put a nail into a wall with a brick or a hammer.
Right.
Both will do it. One's better than the other.
Yep. It's all about what you need for the job and what your intended audience and goals economically are. Because at the end of the day, from my study and some of your previous interviews and talks, you spoke a lot about deadlines and the fact that when you're in the biz, like you say, digitally, you got to be able to turn it over, because they're looking at deadlines and clocks. It's like every other aspect of making a film. It's all about that time and money, period.
Yeah.
So, by the way, you've been just a few sentences, you've been killing some of my questions. I'm looking at my list here, like, wow, he's just letting it flow. That's what I love. So, I wanted to also add, just real quickly, I would say, in quarantine, how have you been doing as far as that goes?
It's easy for me, I must admit, only because I've been a consultant for so many years that I've worked from a home office or worked from my studio. And the work that we do is very long hours. So it's not been a difficult transition in that regard. And I feel pretty robust in regard to handling it, but I'm starting to feel it. I just had a Skype, I was going to call it meeting. It was a social thing last night with Michael Giacchino and Kirk Thatcher, who were friends, and a host of other people. And this conversation last night made me realize, God, I miss just being social in that way. So yeah, the new norm does allow us with Zoom, with Skype, with FaceTime, etc.
Yeah.
You can still connect, but it is not the same. If you and I were sitting across from one another on a physical table,
Right.
I don't want to get too spiritual, but there's an energy.
No, of course.
There's a real thing there. Like, for example, we can't really have legit eye contact.
Right. I
Looking at the screen or up the where do I go? What eye do I look in?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But, we'll adapt to it. So I'm doing good, and I've got a 2-year-old, so it makes it easier for me compared to somebody who has a child who is in school and has to take them out and deal with homeschooling. There's no transition there for me either. So my wife and I are very fortunate. But I sympathize with those that are going through those transitions that have more than one child.
Yeah.
It's tough, but being adaptable is what we are as a species.
Right.
And this is a good learning experience for a lot of people. I'm still able to work from home, which again is hugely, for those people who cannot work remote, this is tough. So you got to remember when you're having your personal experience with something, empathy is, I think, one of the most important assets to have as a human being, because you got to recognize, this isn't too hard on me, so therefore it doesn't really exist.
Right.
And this gets back to other big topics. I don't feel it, therefore it's not something I need to pay too much attention to. So turning on the empathy and thinking of others who, and it's hard to imagine everyone else's situation. So turning your ears on, at least listening to other people. A good friend of mine was telling me how his daughter's graduation is ruined. I thought, didn't even occur to me that they have to have an online Zoom graduating from high school, and they can't go to college just yet. And that's first world problems right there. Yeah. You've got school available to you, so great. But understanding that there are those people who can't work from home. And I want to put this out there too, because one of the things about perception of people like myself, if you look at me without much knowledge of who I am and my experiences, my journey, you see the end result, which is a guy who now has a mortgage, and that's only recently, and I'm 54, who's worked with James Cameron, sat next to Steven Spielberg. I've worked on these huge productions. I've been on television on a show called Face Off.
Yeah.
You look at that from the outside, and anyone who's not in Los Angeles, and you move your way out from there, you can see, and I've been told this before, it's like, what do you have to worry about, especially during coronavirus quarantine? What do you have to worry about? You've got tons of money in the bank and you're covered and blah, blah. It's like, you have no idea, man. I am really just like you. It's all scale. And I've been at the bottom in terms of, I just graduated school. I have no money. How am I going to pay my rent? The same holds true as you get a little bit of money. You're able to buy a home. And again, I consider myself fortunate, but trust me, I've worked my butt off.
Get it? Yeah.
No one has handed me anything. So,
easy.
And I recognize, until I actually own the deed to the house, everything around me is fleeting. This could all go away. And if coronavirus continues and there's no work, I'm in the same position as so many other people. Yes. The difference is, I was able to save a few bucks. I get to watch my bank account dwindle, like everyone else. But I get to work from home. I do have a skill that allows me to work from home, and that's great. But there's no work.
Right.
And so I'm not going to say we're all in this together, because it really bums me out when I see people who are okay. They're going to be fine. A lot of celebrities are doing it, and I get it. It comes usually from a very good place.
Sure.
But again, you got to empathize and realize who you're talking to, which is the world. Yeah. And by saying, we're all in this together, it's like, damn it, we're not.
You're right.
Conceptually, we are, but I can't work from home. I don't have $100,000 in the bank. I've got 5 children at home with me, and I'm a divorced mom. So we're not in it together. My experience is very different from yours.
Yeah, that's real. I appreciate you saying that for those who need to hear it, because that's real. And you know, and I totally relate. I mean, luckily I'm single, so I don't have to take care of anybody else but myself. I'm lucky to be living in my hometown in Atlanta, where I'm from. I got my family right here, my mom, my dad, my sister. I'm an uncle. So like you, I mean, that's the closest I get to relating. He's 2 years old too, so I relate to that. I'm a little tired right now from getting up, having to help him out this morning and stuff. So, you know.
I believe you.
Hey, you know. So yeah, I mean, I totally relate to that. And I'm living that reality of, you know, even though I'm doing this to keep my spirits high because I know so many people and I'm meeting. I mean, for those who don't know, this is the first time we've ever spoken. You know what I mean? We've
Sure, yeah.
Few DMs on Instagram, and I'll break down even some more later. But you know, hey, this is amazing because it shows your humanity to see the quality of what I've been doing and to open up to ONYXCON. So I know I'm gonna say this a million times, but thank you again. But,
thank you. It is a privilege to be considered. You know, this is your time and this is your show, and I'm honored to be asked to be a part of it. So thanks.
That's what's up, fam. So just to speak real basic too, and I know I said this way back. I said the reason I remember your name is I always think of the Neville brothers, and that's how. Yep. So I said, yes, that's my Neville brother there. But you did a contest on Instagram around Halloween. I think it was year before last or somewhere in there.
I think so.
Yeah, and it was for a demon head that you had done, which was a mock-up for. I guess it's just going to easily segue into the Star Trek stuff as we talk about that. But basically, it was a contest, and however many tags people had to try and get the item, they would win it. And I think the only other DM I'd ever sent you was just to shout you out and say, man, I love your work, and I'm following you because you're the man, or whatever. So when I saw the contest, I jumped on it. A bunch of my friends did it. And lo and behold.
There it is.
Oh, my gosh. Man, let me tell you, I keep this in a very special, sacred place. It's on a shelf. It's a level of shelves, and it sits in a special place because, to me, it represents a lot of different energies, not just, you know, I'm someone, I don't want to get too high on the long list of things I understand about words because I study etymology and whatnot. But when people say demon and know the real origin of the word daimon and it not being something evil in its origin, it was more tied to nature and pagan spirituality and whatnot, which I totally have. This is my character, Brother Yams, this guy with the horns sitting next to me. That's something I drew. That was a prop for ONYXCON. It was decor for the event for many years. But
nice.
So I'm one who, you know, and I'm not religious, so I have none of the trappings of, oh, something with horns, it's evil. Oh, so, but you eat beef, right? So you eat the devil, you know? It's like, get out of here with that. Anyway.
You're not allowed to have goat's milk.
Oh, come on, man. I could go on and on. But the beauty of this thing is so incredible to me because, I mean, I keep turning it this way because that's one of my favorite positions for it. Like, I've thought of so many ways to display it because it doesn't matter. Either way it goes, it's incredible. It's like its own work from every angle. So if you don't mind talking a bit about this and how that connects to the Klingons as we get into Star Trek.
Certainly. The birth of that idea of doing that demon head it's interesting how things come to be. I worked with J.J. Abrams on his first Star Trek, which was an amazing experience. And there were Klingons in that, but they ended up being, it was behind a mask. You never saw them. And I was so bummed because of the mystery. And I thought, oh, we're going to get to design the Klingons. Cut to Into Darkness, we're doing the Klingons.
The 3, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh man! Oh my gosh! Yeah.
And it's, you know, again, it's if you're working on these movies, it is a privileged career, no question. And then working on a franchise like Star Trek and getting to redesign the Klingons, which is, you know, it's an unnerving thing because, you know, it's a precious topic, which we could talk about Klingon design maybe later. But when I was doing that, the time frame was really tight to have a concept done and then execute the makeup. And I realized there might be a better way to show to JJ or the client what the character's really going to look like. And I did Super 8 in between those two Star Treks. And that's where this notion came from, because what I realized on Super 8 was, rather than showing pencil sketches and even digital models in gray, what made more sense was to show it in the context of a final shot. So I worked with the DP and I asked him, Larry Fung, the question of, how is this going to be lit? How are you going to shoot it? Because when I show the designs to JJ, I'm going to show it in that scenario. So what JJ is evaluating is what it really looks like in the theaters. So from that, I realized with our Klingons, I needed to do a virtual makeup test and show not ideas, but show the final product lit the way it would be lit, using silicone versus latex, but digitally. So I sculpted them in ZBrush, I colored them in ZBrush, and I rendered them in Modo, because that's software I happen to know. And I lit it the way it would be lit. I lensed it the way it would be lensed. And I chose material settings that represented silicone. We ended up doing latex, by the way. But the point was, when I showed JJ the images, I also chose initially to have a background on these images that was a kitchen. And why I chose that was, one, it was available. Two, rather than creating the environment, which sounds counter to what I've just proposed, which is show it thematically, I wanted it to look like a makeup test in a makeup lab.
Okay.
Because it didn't, there are reasons for that, which we can get into, but when JJ saw the images, he at first was like, when did you guys do these? And I was like, sweet, that's exactly what I wanted you to think, because I was able to convey contact lens idea, shapes, painting, and all of that. So by doing that, there's two sides to this school. You show something and it gets approved, and that's the expectation. That's the best scenario. The downside is if you're showing something that cannot be achieved, but it's so realistic that the director thinks that's what they're going to get, that's lying. That's not doing your job.
Right.
So before I show JJ, I'll show the people who have to execute it, which will be the makeup artist primarily, the head of the department. David Anderson was Into Darkness, and I would ask his opinion and approval to then share it with JJ, because he's the one that has to deal with it. And so anyhow, after that happened, and then we saw it on camera, and I realized that was a really useful process, because we didn't have time. I guess the whole point of this is we didn't have time to do a makeup test.
Right.
And, that's unfortunate, but that is life. So I'm now on Face Off, and I'm now working with Glenn Hetrick on personal projects. And we both thought it would be a good idea to show that process. But I didn't and couldn't use the Klingons because of the whole, rights issue. Right. So that's no big deal. I'll just do something that was kind of like the Klingon. And then I talked to Glenn about, what would be an interesting subject matter. And at the time I was working, we were conceiving of a new TV show with some pretty amazing people, and it needed demons. So I thought, this is perfect. I will get the most out of this one thing. I'll design a demon. I'll do the whole soup to nuts process, so Glenn and I can have the experience of developing a product like this. And it'll be part of my demo, and we'll have a demon for this TV show pitch. So it was a lot of different things. But all the design choices in that demon head were classic Neville approaches to design, which it almost makes my hair stand up and feel icky when I use myself in third person. The Nevster.
Okay,
But what I mean by that is I have a certain, obviously I have a style.
Yes.
Like it or not, it's a style, and I have an approach, which I think is valid. And so the style of kind of automotive surfacing, industrial design, product design surfacing, you can see when you held the top view of that up, the lines are moving a certain way. And we could talk for like a couple hours just on my theories of industrial design, man-made creature design, and biology, and why things look the way they do in nature, and why a car looks the way it does, and the best automotive designs reference harmony, golden rectangle, golden mean, sacred geometry, all this stuff. So it's all kind of in that sculpture. And then there's some things that are just because I ran out of time. It's like, okay, that's a real thing. I had to get this printed. So I needed to do those horns super fast because we did a full-size print of those horns because that was a makeup done on me.
Oh yeah, I was about to say, you mentioned that to me when I was asking you about it. So like you said, this is a miniature 3D printing of you as all of the rest of this. And so with the style I noticed that you always do, or one of the many styles, I call one of the Neville, but one of the books of Neville is the what I call the lion nose or the cat nose. That you know, that's what I call it. Is that where that reference comes from? That shape, the way it tends to have, just like in the Na'vi, in Avatar and whatnot.
Not really in this case.
Okay.
Again, it might sound narcissistic that is I chose to do it of me. It wasn't. Believe me, I don't like looking at my face for hours and hours and hours because that's what ends up happening. But it was. I had my head scanned and available in a computer to prove this point because, again, as a virtual makeup, it needed to be real. So if you do subtractive sculpting, now you're adding a visual effect or you're lying to your client. So everything on it had to be additive in the same way that if you cast my face in plaster and you start putting clay on it, it has to be additive unless you have the budget for removal. So,
quick question.
Yeah.
Just one that you draw and then you take that over to your digital drawing. Do you sculpt also by clay and everything? Is that part of it? I thought so.
That's my background.
I thought that was part of you too, yeah.
Yeah, traditional sculpting.
Okay.
Wax sculpting, whatever the medium. But in this scenario, I was able to use the one head that, again, didn't have any issues with rights. So I wasn't going to sue myself.
Right.
So the nose thing, it's a byproduct of the size of my nose, you know, how far it sticks off my face, how wide my nostrils are, and the fact that I did want a double nostril, which was a Klingon-y type thing. So
which you brought to town, and I love that. You know, to me, that was one of the most distinct things that made the new Klingons the new ones, is the multiple nostril element. You know.
Well, it's, if you look at the original Klingon design, there's a ridge on the nostril.
Yep, I know what you mean.
There's sometimes no answers or no person that you can find and say why. Yeah. So you see a detail and think, what else could that be? And so I riffed off that and evolved it into a double. And because I wanted a deeper hole for the nostril, it kind of meant that you had to pull it wider and a little bit further away to get that negative space. So all of those things sort of designed the nose for me. I didn't go into it thinking I'd like a cat-like nose, a predatory nose. It was just, this is the amount of room I have to work with. I have kind of a big nose to begin with.
Cool, man. It looks great. I love it. To go back to one of the first things we said, with your family, ethnically speaking, have you ever done a genealogical test? Do you know your roots specifically? Oh, how much do you?
I don't, not genealogically. We did a family tree, and I say this jokingly, but I am part black only because I'm black Irish, which is, if you know what that means, it's not at all black.
Right.
If anything, it's Spanish. But I have no idea.
You think there might be Spanish too?
Well, in that I'm black Irish, we had the dark hair when I had it, and the darker skin. comes from, you look at, there's a lot of Irish who actually have black hair and not as pale a skin. And that is from years back when the Spanish came in and did their thing. And my mom is more fair in that regard. But I believe if you take it all the way back, as a woman whose name slips me, she's a Caucasian activist who is all about getting over the whole race thing. She was saying that we're all from the same black woman. Not being
just
the science side of it, the probability of us coming from a brown origin is pretty darn high. So I would love to think that I've got some in me.
Oh yeah.
No idea.
You should do. I mean, I've always been fascinated by that, and I'm always going to be studying it until I get as many pieces of it as I can for the end of my life. But I was lucky. I did do AfricanAncestry.com, which is the only company, black-owned company, that will give you your direct African tribal roots according to their database, and they have a very broad database of pretty much most of the continent.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, you should try it. I mean, like a lot of the actors and staff for Black Panther did it, and that's how like Chadwick Boseman and others found out their roots. So
beautiful.
And I still got to do more. I did like, because it's the Y and the X, so I still got to do like 2 more to know. But I know quite a bit, and it was very fascinating.
That's great.
Yeah, but so with Star Trek, well, before we get into the films, let's do a segue to just at what point as a young artist did it get serious for you to be an artist? And then how did you transition from design into what you do in terms of all of the films and everything?
We all play with crayons and Play-Doh and all that stuff. So I think we all like art. I think it's why there's many people who say, I can't draw a stick figure. They still love art. It's because everyone loves art and everyone loves to do it. And some people are more naturally gifted. I would say that I was definitely not naturally gifted in the arts. I could always sculpt, though. Not well, but I mean, it's something that kind of came naturally. And I wore a lump of clay and trying to turn it into something. The first thing I ever sculpted, 8 years old, was a female nude torso. And it was because I had an art book, like one of those Walter Foster art books from back in the day. And I basically just followed all the steps of doing this classic female nude torso. And I still remember to this day and this is going to sound weird, I recognize, but it's important. It's important why it would sound weird as well. I remember rolling the balls of clay for the nipples. And I'm 8 years old and thinking, I hope I don't get in trouble for this, but it's in the book. And I'd never seen a boob yet. So I'm just kind of following what the art is.
Right.
And I remember doing it, pushing them on and looking at the art and thinking, wow, I've achieved it. I finished doing this. And I showed it to my parents, ready for some things to be said. Like, oh, you might not want to, or, whatever it is that people feel about nudity. And nothing was mentioned other than congratulations, it's beautiful, all the things parents should do. And maybe they could have been a bit more critical about proportion. I layered my clay. But that was like the beginning of, oh, it's art.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I like this. And I haven't been, I was putting those nipples on with great trepidation as a child. I wasn't ashamed of it, and I wasn't shamed by having done it. And again, seed was planted. It's okay to do that. And if I did something gratuitous, they would have called me out, even if I didn't even know what gratuitous meant.
Right.
But that was a very important memory for me as an artist, as a kid who liked the arts. But I wanted at that time to be an astronaut or an oceanographer.
Okay.
Which neither of those came to pass because art always was calling my name. But I kind of knew that, obviously I didn't know, but at the time I knew that an artist can't make money. You know, I just imagined in Paris, covered in oil paint and smoking cigarettes and drinking espresso and not having any money. You know, it's a very romantic image, but it's actually in fact horrible.
It is. Stereotype terrible. Yeah.
Yeah. Starving artist is not a good thing.
No, I never like that. And I never let anybody call me that. I don't care how bad it's ever gotten. I'm like, look, I will always eat. You can guarantee that.
But because of that, and that stereotype, I decided I'm not going to be an idiot here and become an artist. I'm going to be an actor. That's a smart decision.
Okay.
So,
we're not artists.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's all art. That's me, you know. Yep.
It is. And, you know, I'm sort of joking, but I've realized that for me to be an actor versus an illustrator, it is amazing. I had this pragmatism at the time. I looked at the investment financially and time of going to school to become an actor because I wanted to learn a craft versus going to school to become a proper illustrator. And I'm living in Chicago at the time, and the Art Institute of Chicago had its price tag. I forget what it was. But then the acting school in California, which was the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, which Spencer Tracy went to, I thought, you know what? It's in 1 year, I'll know whether or not is what I want to do. So I moved to California, packed up a car, drove out at 16, I guess, and it was really amazing. You know, I went to the school and I learned the craft of performing and acting and voice and dance. Loved to dance. Actually wanted to be a professional dancer. Anything Gene Kelly, Fred Astaire, Gregory Hines. Those are kind of my three big inspirations of, I got to do this. Wow. And so when I came out, the intent was to learn acting and dance. My mother was a dancer, so it made sense that would be of it. Well, the influences I had were the classic, Fred Astaire, Gene Kelly, as I mentioned, Gregory Hines, who wasn't classic in the sense that he goes way back, but Gregory Hines also loved the Gene Kelly. You know, he was a tapper. Right. And so I really wanted to do that. And going to the acting school gave me an opportunity to kind of work on my dance skills and other things. When I graduated from there, you know, now my friends and my community is a bunch of actors. So you get your headshots, you get your agent, you start doing that thing, and nothing was coming. I was not auditioning at all. I was working as a waiter, which is standard fare. Yeah. And I loved it. I really did enjoy being a waiter, actually. As strange as that might sound, I loved customers and making people happy and feel good about dining wherever I was working, including Del Taco. Wow. But I was just not getting any interviews. And I remember complaining to my agent saying, you know, you got to send me out. I think legally you need to send me out or I get to go to another agency. So they sent me out on a Kieran beer commercial. And I remember going to that audition because if you've been on auditions, you know what it's like. You're told what the brief is. You know, you're going to be a college jock. So wear something that makes you look like a college jock. Comb your hair so it looks like a college jock. You know, if you got glasses, whatever the role is. And so this Kieran beer commercial, I show up as white American as it can possibly be because I was not told anything more than that. And surrounding me are all the other people auditioning for the same role who amazingly were Japanese. It's a Kieran beer commercial. I'm looking around thinking, she sent me on this just to send me out on an audition. All right. And that was the end of it. I thought, you know, this is ridiculous. I'm working at a restaurant. I went to school for this. I'm okay as an actor. I don't think I'm anything great. I'm not hideous. I'm not a model. I'm usable. somebody come on, please hire me.
Yeah.
And I felt at that moment I had no control over my destiny. I couldn't even exercise the art. As a visual artist, you can grab a sketchbook and draw something cool, and even sell it maybe. As a performing artist, and this is pre-internet, pre-affordable cameras and stuff. What do you do? Just stand in front of a mirror and do a Shakespeare sonnet? And that's fine. But I just didn't feel like I had control over it, and I needed more control. So my mother had told me about this school called the Art Center College of Design, and I decided I'm going to go up there, check it out, because I think I want to change careers. Hung up the phone with my mom saying, I'm not doing this acting thing anymore. Stepped away from the phone, almost literally 3 steps, and the phone rang. This is when phones were connected to a wall. And so I went back to the phone, picked it up, hello, and it was the casting director for General Hospital, the soap opera.
Wow.
He said, we have a role for you. Are you available to come in? It's like, to hell with Art Center, man. I'm going to be an actor. It's happening.
Wow.
Quick how I spun that. So, yeah, I got to do, then things started to happen in acting. And, once you get a taste of being on set, and getting to do your craft, which the irony was in General Hospital, I was a waiter. So I was good. I had that roll down.
The actual rate back in the day, we're talking 7 years ago, was 64/8 for background. And then when I found out, so I left my little, going nowhere type job or whatever. And I was teaching with seniors, which they all loved me and everything, but I wasn't getting paid nothing. It was just a miserable, they would be telling me, why are you here with us? What are you doing?
Yeah.
Get out of here, But, so I went there and I was like, oh man, so this is how it's going to be. And they sent me that rate for the first time. I was like, oh. But it still felt just as good because I knew I had jumped out and pulled my parachute, like, let's go. Whatever. So with that role in General Hospital, did it lead to more? Did you keep acting, or how'd that go?
I did. I had a few more small roles on things. There was some commercial work, but I recognized rather quickly when that character, as television, particularly soap operas do, they're creating on the fly. They're changing things, characters in and out, on and off. And I was off pretty damn quick. So I thought, again, I have no control. I could have been the most amazing actor, but they have a story that they're trying to tell. Yeah. So that's when, after I wasn't getting any more work, it's really bizarre. I guess it's just because it was opportunity. I decided to create a portfolio to try and get accepted to this Art Center College of Design in Pasadena. But I still needed to make money. So I did stand-up comedy with my friend, my roommate. And that was opportunistic, again, because he had connections with other comedians. He's a funny guy. And he gave me this opportunity to do a duo act with him. So we worked at the Ice House and the Improv. And, that was a real great experience to have, to be in that community, in that world. And attempt to be funny. But when you put yourself out there and you're on stage, particularly with comedy, my goodness, talk about make me laugh.
Right.
The audience is there and you have to deliver. I guess as an artist, we always have to deliver, but it's immediate whether your art is working, and there's no fixing it.
Right.
You can adjust as you're going if you're doing a drawing for a client, but when you tell a joke that flatlines, it's like to come out of that and survive that experience. So no, I did not end up like Jay Leno with my own talk show as a result. But the experience of that and the experience of acting, I still use today, and I'll explain that in a moment. But because the work wasn't happening, and I decided to just use acting as money. So the comedy thing paid a little bit, the restaurants mostly. I was fortunate to get accepted to the Art Center. More importantly, I was fortunate to get a scholarship because there's no way I could have afforded to go there. And so I went there, did my thing. I was very fortunate to be just good enough. And I learned industrial design. I went there because I wanted to be like a Joe Johnson, who was an illustrator in Star Wars, and a Nilo Rodis Jamero, who was another illustrator. Those guys were, and Ralph McQuarrie, of course. I thought that's what I want to do, is become that. When I got to the school, there was a whole other world called industrial design, automotive, product, environmental, architecture, that kind of thing. And I was like, this is really cool. I think that's my calling. So I learned that and graduated and did that for many, many years, but always yearned for the fun of it to do creature work. So for the fun of it, I would draw creatures. And I was not any good, quite honestly. I think I may still not be very good, but.
Oh man, come on, you're incredible. Stop.
I'm not even being self-deprecating. It's like, there's so many good people out there. I'm
Right.
good enough to put dinner on the table for the most part. But I really felt a hunger to kind of get into film, because even just being on the set a few times, I loved this collaborative art called film. Because you've got your actors, and the actors are really a small part of the entire mechanism. Producers, makeup artists, craft services, keeping us all happy and fed. You know, every single contribution is key and pivotal to the craft coming out well. So I love the other side of the camera, and I really wanted to put the effort into trying and get into the industry that way. But it's not as if you can just, you know, walk up to Paramount Pictures, get past security, and start knocking on the door saying, "Hey, I'm here."
Right.
So much of what life is being prepared for the accidents. I'm sure you've heard that analogy. And I was prepared in that I could draw, and I had a design sensibility. I had no idea how to get into it. I had friends doing it, but they were all young. They had no power. But where it kind of all started was being a teacher. I worked at the Art Center College of Design, my alma mater. Now I graduated from there, and I went back and I started teaching. And there was another instructor named Phil Hedema, who was in charge of themed entertainment at Universal Studios. My buddy and I, Scott Robertson, who's an amazing artist, you should follow him if you don't. He and I started the business together right out of school.
What was the name again?
Scott Robertson.
Robertson. Okay, I'll look him up.
Yeah, you'll be plenty impressed. But when we worked professionally, one of our first jobs was designing wheelchairs and products for the disabled. And that was our focus for several years. So in talking to Phil Hedema one day, he learned that Scott and I knew quite a bit about wheelchair design and also the user, the disabled person. So they needed a new ride vehicle that could accommodate people with disabilities. So he thought, hey, let me ask these two guys, because they know wheelchairs, maybe they could help design a vehicle. Scott Robertson was a vehicle designer. I was a product designer, and we both knew wheelchairs and wheelchair users. So it was this perfect marriage. And the ride was called Men in Black, the Ride, Alien Attack. And I thought, Men in Black, that was an awesome movie. And there's creatures. Maybe they'll let me draw a creature or two. And Phil was gracious enough to let me draw a creature or two. But they had a team already doing it. And we designed the vehicle, made sure that it accommodated the disabled. And then there was an opportunity to do more. They saw what we were capable of, and they gave us the opportunity to do the creature design, a good chunk of it. And that's when they said, okay, Neville, we've seen your portfolio, and there's not a whole lot of creature in there, but you're a good manager. You can manage people. Can we recommend a few artists to you? Absolutely. So they suggested a guy who was already working on the production and worked on the films with Rick Baker, and his name was Carlos Huante. And Carlos, I didn't know who he was, but I met him at Universal, and we talked about moving him to my studio now in Culver City. And for those who know who Carlos is, you can imagine the blissful ignorance that was going on here. So I don't know who this guy is, other than somebody they recommended. I also don't really know creature design, quite honestly, at this point. So Carlos is at our studio, and he's got his pencil and his paper, and I'm tasking him with what I've been asked to do. And he starts doing these drawings, and I'm like, a pencil could do that?
What's his last name? Is that Carlos too?
Carlos, last name Huante.
Okay.
Yeah, phenomenal. You'll see. And you'll probably never want to talk to me again and really talk to him. He's incredible. But the coolest thing was we needed more people. And so I asked Carlos, I said, do you know anyone? And he said, yeah, a buddy of mine, Jose Fernandez, get him on board. So I got Jose Fernandez on board. And again, it was like, this is scary, man. These guys are really good. I guess this is what every creature designer must be able to do. And I certainly could not. And then I hired another guy, recommended, Brian Wade. Incredible. Another guy, Jor Duchel. Incredible. Jim Cagle. Incredible. Mold maker, because we needed our sculptures that we were sculpting as well. We needed molds made. Somebody recommended Robert Freitas. Incredible. So I got all these people in our studio, and unbeknownst to me, these are the apex predators of the creature design world.
Word.
And they were my teachers. They were the ones that I just looked over my shoulder and watched them. And I asked Carlos, what pencil is that? What's the paper? I just bought the same pencil and the same paper a couple days ago because it's what he recommended, and it made sense to me. The clay I've used, recommended by these guys. So my teachers in the world of creature design were the best of the best, to quote Men in Black. So talk about blessed and serendipity and all these things. So then I'm working on a ride, not the movies. Jose Fernandez went to lunch one day and left his keys next door because we were kind of in a business complex. And he said he was going to meet with some friends who work in film that are renting down a couple doors. So anyhow, this woman knocks on my door, and she said, I think Jose is working with you. He left his keys. And she's kind of looking around at our studio because we did also bicycle products, bicycles and bike helmets and safety gear. And she looked at all these helmets that we had, like the Tron helmet, and said, do you guys design helmets? It's like, oh, yeah, we do. She said, oh, I'm working on a film where we need a helmet. Is that something you could maybe help out with? It's like, yeah, certainly. We've prototyped these things before, no problem. She said, okay, let me get back to you and we'll talk about it. And she introduced herself as Colleen Atwood. And I'm like, oh, okay, nice to meet you, Colleen. And then later you figure out who this person is, multi-Academy Award-winning, incredible costume designer. I was like, what the heck? Right. So she's working on the movie Minority Report. Awesome. And because of Scott's and myself's industrial design experience, particularly with bikes, we were brought on to do prop design for a variety of things. So we were pretty deeply involved with Minority Report for a while. That wasn't the first film I worked on, but it was the first production as kind of an illustrator working on it. I worked on Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe with Rhythm and Hues before. But that experience of Minority Report then opened up the opportunity to work with Colleen again on Planet of the Apes. And then, things just started to happen. But I was working detached from it until a buddy of mine was years ago working on Battle Angel Alita.
Yay.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. And he said, this is about 15 years ago, maybe more. He said, I'm working with James Cameron. He's starting up a different thing called Project 880, and it's got creatures. I know you like to draw creatures. Maybe you should submit your portfolio. And I thought, to James Cameron's next film, I'll submit my portfolio, but I don't have a whole lot.
Hey.
And, ever since then, I've firmly believed, you don't win the lottery unless you buy a lotto ticket. And to me, that was, what have I got to lose?
That's right.
So Jim hired 4 of us to work at his house for just a few months. Myself, Jordu, again, who I'd just gotten to know from the Men in Black ride. Yuri Bartoli, another wonderful artist who just came off of Madagascar, the animated show, and a guy named Wayne Barlow, who, when I heard Wayne Barlow was on, I was like,
yeah,
oh man, I can't do this job. These guys are way too good, and Wayne Barlow is a god to many of us. So, having the knowledge that I was going to be working at Jim Cameron's house with these 3 other guys, that is, if you looked up Intimidation, it would have that story in it.
I got to do it real quick just because you brought up the name. So it was sitting right here next to me.
Yes, sir.
Shout out to Octavia Butler, too. But that's the most amazing cover that was ever for this book, in my opinion. That's just, that dude is the dude. Yeah, he's the dude. Yep.
Yeah, so anyhow, we 3 months turned into 3 years for me. And that was really the beginning of the trajectory of creature design as a career. I was prepared in that I had a few things under my belt, but I wasn't prepared to be really, I really was not prepared to be on Avatar. So I spent more time than those guys, because I had to, of learning anatomy, animal anatomy, and developing a skill at drawing creatures. And Jim afforded us that opportunity to get better on the job, which is pretty damn rare.
Okay.
So, one of the greatest experiences of my career was Avatar, because I learned so much. I was taught things, but you have to take it upon yourself to continue to learn. When you graduate from wherever, high school, hopefully you get a chance to go to some more schooling. After formally having paid for somebody to teach you, as an artist in particular, you have to continue to learn, and that's on you. So knowing how to be self-motivated, or just being self-motivated, picking up a book to learn from, going to the museum, having conversations like I am with you, these are the other things, the bigger things to becoming a good artist, is your wealth of information, your personal library that you accumulate in your head, not just store-bought.
Yes.
But that's what Avatar was like one of the greatest educations in animal life. I felt the obligation to learn how birds fly for real, not, they just flap their wings. What are the muscles that activate a lift and a pull, cord? What does that mean to flights, center of gravity, all those things? And then that way, when I was communicating with Jim on the design of Banshee, I knew a bit more of what I was talking about versus this is a cool looking creature.
Right.
Cool is subjective.
I'm so glad you're going where you're going, because I was waiting to hear you say that, because in all of the interviews I studied before we did this, you constantly mentioned the difference in just being cool and understanding what you're dealing with, the tactical, the elements of whatever it is in nature, how it relates to the real world, so that it can be convincing even if it's a fantasy thing. And like I say, I always can tell that about the best artists. So I love to hear you say that, because it's my biggest frustration when I see something and I can tell this is all cool. It's just a bunch of people, man, isn't that cool? That's cool. That's good. And then, and don't let it be something where you're referencing someone's culture, and not to get us off into that again, we covered it pretty well, but you're doing no favors to somebody's culture, and it's an obvious reference to somebody through some aliens or something, and you're being insulting because you don't even know what the hell you're dealing with, but it's cool. No,
yeah,
that ain't cool, so no, I love that. But
it's, part of the cool versus functional thing, it is a given that it has to be cool. If you don't succeed at that, then you've failed your job.
Right.
It's not a given that it has to be intellectually grounded. It's not a given that it has to be sound in its biology. Those aren't things that your client ever says to you. You're told, I want it to be something I've never seen before, et cetera. But you're never really given the brief in your, at least with what I do. I want you to really think about the utility of the biology that you're going to come up with. No one's ever said those words to me. Jim Cameron was more like that because that's the way he's built. But as an industrial designer, that comes natural. It's not forced. You have to understand how it works, safety issues with the product that you're creating, the physics of an object, whether it's a screwdriver or a wheelchair, manufacturing techniques. Oh, we have an invader.
Hi, Daddy.
Well, how about that? You want to say hello?
Daddy.
You might as well come on in and join the party.
I know feeling it, Daddy.
Come here. Let me show you the most recent creature design. Say hi to Joseph.
Hello, buddy.
Say hi.
What's this?
Hi.
How you doing?
Hi.
I don't know. What's
Yeah.
this?
So Daddy's having a conversation. Can I see you in a moment?
Come here, buddy.
As a yes. We'll see how well it goes.
All right.
You're gonna have a snack now, I think. Can you go with Mommy?
No.
No? Here we go. I'll be with you soon. I swear to God.
Daddy,
Yeah. It's gonna get ugly for a second. Love you.
Yeah, I know all about that. It's all good. Like I said, I'm just lucky I'm not on uncle duty right now. We'd be sharing that same moment. Like, yeah, what you say? Come on, hold on.
Yeah, it gets tricky. Definitely juggling many things.
Oh man, what?
But where I was going with this is, there's a thing that most people don't really know unless you've had this experience of making a creature, which is not a product, but it really is, because it's going to end up being a toy, possibly soap on a rope, whatever. But it's a new consumer thing, so you're inventing, whether you're inventing new aesthetics or inventing features. And what I learned and was kind of galvanized and punctuated working on Avatar with Jim was the importance of this as it relates to selling your idea. Because cosmetics are subjective. And if I came in and said to Jim, I have a drawing on the wall, so hypothetically, it's my version of what the Banshee looks like. It's really cool to me. And I say, what do you think of it? It's really, I love the reds and the fact that his chin is kind of shaped like this.
Yeah.
And Jim's a smart guy, so he'll articulate his point of view on this. But other people may just be like, I can't really explain to you why I don't like it. I just don't like it.
Right.
And so selling aesthetics is tricky business because of the subjectivity, unless it is grounded in something that qualifies and validates the choices. And you can sell subjective cosmetics this way as well. But when it comes to like form follows function, which I mostly work that way, when I'm talking about a shape or why the nose is a certain way, why the length of the head is a certain way, and I explained to Jim in this one very, very important meeting to me, I was trying to answer his biggest question about the Banshee, and I explained to him the function and the utility of bird skulls and gaboon viper skulls. And I had, it's broken its jaw, but this is relevant. I had this in my office, and I was showing Jim this gaboon viper skull and pointing to the quadrate bone and the palatine bone, explaining how it works. Not that he needed to be taught it, but I was like, this is why the banshee head is shaped the way it is. And to sum up an interesting meeting, he had basically said, that's how, that makes sense. That I understand. And my takeaway was, I could have tried to convince him that red was the right color and these shapes versus those shapes were the right ones to choose. But those are all subjective. But red was chosen because of this particular scientific physics reason. And these shapes were the way they are is because the bones dictated it. And because that bone is that shape, the muscle needs to be of a certain blah, blah, blah. So in the end, I realized the best way to sell your ideas is with grounded data. It's like with real strong, inarguable information, as opposed to just, I thought it looked cool, don't you?
Right.
So that, and ever since then, I've lived that.
Yeah.
But to end that story and end it with my involvement with Jim, at the very end of my 3 years, I'm working on a Thanator, which is Jim's baby in a lot of ways. It's the Black Panther-y type creature.
Okay.
And Jim had some sketches. I was pretty much executing his drawings. And I felt confident enough to have this conversation with him, which was, I said, Jim, inside of the mouth of the creature that you have sketched out, I'm having a tough time reconciling the dentition. He's got these fangs, but then he's got something else in there, and there seems to be some redundancy and maybe even contradiction. And he looked at me and said, Neville, sometimes it just has to be cool. And I thought, yeah, sometimes I do think it through too much. And sometimes you do have to let go. And sometimes you have to take the risk of, I'm not going to go into this with too much foresight. I'm going to let myself be ignorant. And the balance I've struck is I will let the cart lead the horse sometimes and design something that's just cool. But I have enough, and you can't see it, but I've got enough of a library of physical books and experience to be able to kind of reverse engineer a choice. Say, well, the reason there's that strange gland there, it started off because it was just cool.
Sure.
But I can actually come up with a use for it.
Right.
So you can work both ways. And I think that Wayne Barlow, he, and I'm saying this respectfully, he has no filter with his invention of the organic. And that's a very, Wayne, if you're seeing this, it's a compliment. And by that, I mean people like me who start off with the knowledge of the way it should be, you can stifle yourself. And you can hold back on something that could be amazing, where Wayne does not hold back. And I would watch him conceive these things, and I just felt like such a pedestrian designing stuff. Mine's got ears, horns, and eyes, and Wayne's has got, what is that? You can't do that. But that's the talent of knowing what can be done, knowing the rules of whatever it is, and then with that knowledge, you can bend and tweak the rules to the point of where they're teetering on the edge of breaking, but they still are just holding together.
It's a beautiful place to be. Yeah,
it is, and it's a tricky place to be, and it's scary if you're really pushing the boundaries. But I learned a lot from Wayne in that regard. He's fearless.
The whole time, as you were getting closer to speaking on nature, your relationship with nature, I would assume I kind of know this because I know from just the one pic I put up it's been way back on Instagram, and you liked it, and I was like, oh wow, Neville was looking at my stuff. But it was, I love to hike, and I love fishing and all of that. That's just been my life, and it will forever be. I always will.
Wonderful.
So, yeah, and so I taken some picture of some driftwood next to a creek or something. And you was like, I have a texture file that's similar to this. And I was like, see, that's the real folk right there, folk who take pictures like that. So later on, it becomes this texture and all these other, you know what I'm saying? Or the
true.
sharp tooth chin here, you know, things like that. Oh, I see it all. I see every little thing, and I love it. So, I mean, even if that wasn't what you were representing, that's what it reminded me of. But no, I love all that, man. And so I just wanted you to speak briefly on that. And let me ask you, do you? I mean, obviously, the way you reacted, you do hike and stuff, but do you fish too?
No, I don't fish. I had fished when I was a kid.
Okay, okay.
I don't do enough
Yeah.
outside of even with quarantine gone. I love to travel, and I love to travel to places that most would find uncomfortable, whether it's because it's not safe, or because it's just like it's hot, it's muggy, there's no AC, wow, right?
Yeah.
But it's not a trip to a remote place that's got an amazing hotel with a spa and AC. And I did one trip, which was one of my favorite trips ever, to Borneo. I had this goal of personally sculpting a baby orangutan, just because I fell in love with the photograph I saw. Long story short, I took a trip to a place in Borneo, Kalimantan, and Camp Leakey, Dr. Leakey's kind of national park there, primatologist. And I got the chance to spend time with primatologists and scientists and researchers and just observe the fauna. We were in these stilted river cabins, no AC, no protection from bugs, and it was the real deal. And you camped out in the jungle, and you got leeches and very large bug bites, and it was so uncomfortable and so unpleasant at times, but you don't even see that because of the experience you're having with the indigenous people, with other like minds. And if you do have the opportunity to see an orangutan, which I did, several, it's a life changer. And I had a particularly unique experience with an orangutan that should not have happened, that did, for whatever reason. And that to me is how I like to experience life, is have it be as raw and as real as possible. I was lucky to be in Vietnam recently. Well, it's relative, a few years back. And I went there cold. I didn't know anyone, but a friend of mine said, there's this guy there who will take you around. And there's great restaurants and all sorts of stuff in Saigon. And I thought, okay, I can do that. But what I'd rather do is have him take me out away from where everyone's going to go. And so I met this guy, and he had a tiny little 50cc scooter, and at 6'4", as a passenger on the back of this, with a helmet on. I looked like Magilla Gorilla because I had this tiny little helmet just kind of like sitting on top of my head.
Right.
I had all my camera gear. And I said, do me a favor, take me far away, as far as you want to go. I'd love to meet a family that is as real as it gets. And you interpret, and I would just like to, if that makes sense, if it's not, this white guy trying to buy an experience with the real people. I don't want to be that guy. I also don't want to be the guy that's, seeing the commercialized version of Vietnam. So he took me on a 3-hour scooter ride. And let me tell you, that was if you want it uncomfortable.
Okay. Right. Yeah.
Oh, it was so physically painful.
Right.
And we got to, I have no idea what the name of the place was. An amazing experience. Another 3 hours back, I was beat up. He, of course, this is what he does. So again, you learn about your privilege. My back hurts. Let me go back to my hotel room.
Sure.
And but that being said, I do prefer as much as I can to be immersive in any place. In this country as well. If I go to Louisiana, I want it to be a little dirty, a little gritty, a little real for
Mhm.
to utilize a cliche. So that's my fishing. That's my hiking.
Yeah, the main reason I asked is the whole time over, I don't know if it's your left or my right, but there's a fish in your cabinet that looks like a bass. And so, yeah. Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Is it? Is that a largemouth? Looks like it's
I believe it is.
yeah, yeah. And so,
This guy's a good one. Not on camera. But yeah, this is just a vicious.
oh yeah, from the Amazon, the vampire fish. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. That is so wow. Wow. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
put that out because I literally let me explain. So I mean, fishing is a passion. I'm an angler, and my dad is the one that passed me the. I always say he's the Obi-Wan Kenobi. I'm Skywalker. You know, so I started a fishing tournament, an ONYXCON fishing tournament. We're actually just about to announce it right around the same time as I put this interview out.
Yeah.
So I've been gathering up people who might be interested in, even loosely, even if you're just curious and think, oh, I'll do it. And all you're doing is you're going to just post your results. Whatever you can catch a brim, a little small thing, and be like, hey, I caught this for ONYXCON, you know what I'm saying? And just send us the link and all that. And then we're trying to get some sponsors behind it and everything. But when I saw the fish, I thought, oh man, there's never fish too. This is too awesome.
I don't. Sorry to let you down. I don't.
It's all good. I might be encouraging you to get out there. You know, you might do it one day.
Maybe.
Yeah. Or hell, we'll go together sometime eventually.
Sure.
I will be back in Cali eventually. I got some friends in LA and stuff. So are you near LA? Are you in that area?
Yeah, very close. Yeah,
okay.
Just a stone's throw from where I'm at.
Gotcha. So yeah, so obviously nature is influencing the way your work looks, and you've got all the references, and you're always thinking more. And so as you grow as an artist in the biz, there was an article I read that I can't remember where I read it from. I know I wrote you about it. I sent you a DM about it as soon as I saw it. And it blew my mind, just you're a conversationist, so you're doing your thing, you're breaking down your whole career. But toward the end of the article, the person asked, like, what's the future for Neville Page? And you were saying how you want to make your own film, you have your own concepts. And I'm reading this with the biggest grin, like, and I want to be in everything he's talking about.
And it's not unrealistic to think that couldn't happen.
Oh, trust me, I'm here for it. So I just wanted to ask, like, what is that bucket list? For what you can give, I understand NDAs and what you don't want to give away, but just kind of put us in the mindset of what is Neville Page trying to create?
It's a bigger answer than you probably want to even deal with. So I'll kind of give you bullet points.
I don't know how much longer you want to be on here, but I figured we'd try and end on this because I don't want you to be away from family too long.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. And this is a good way to end it because it is where I'm at, and it's the most important thing, and it's an accumulation of my life, my experiences, and my observations. Mm. So I'm known for I'm continually introduced as a creature designer, which I don't really consider myself that as a title. Concept designer, that's getting closer. Storyteller, that's a little bit closer. I always wanted to direct. I always wanted to write stories. I think a lot of us, everyone likes to tell a story. So the entry to telling stories has been creature design and working in film in this capacity. But this past 10 years ago, had the opportunity with a producer to create some IP, some ideas basically. Mm-hmm. And that wet my whistle for either just the hunger to do it or the delusion of thinking I could do it. And I really liked developing story. Mm-hmm. That was 10 years ago. And ever since then, I've been trying to figure out the way to get into it. I wasn't willing, and nor could I, give up my career as a creature designer and just become that, because it would also be delusional to think that because I want to tell story, I can tell story. I didn't know if I could or not. I'm still not sure if I can. But I kind of like to go from that 10 years to today. I have a slate of ideas, basically a piece of paper with things I'd like to do as movie ideas, and some I've developed pretty far. Tons of imagery, scripts, and we all have that. Mm-hmm. Well, all of us are interested in this avenue.
I do the same thing. I write, and I also write. So I have literally like about 2 or 3 scripts. So yeah. I feel
Yeah,
you.
and that is part of what you do. So that's a whole different business. You know, once you get past I'm creating art in the form of written word and story ideas, then it's like, okay, I've got a sculpture or a design of something. How do I sell it? And it's a huge, there's a huge chasm of things to do to get that to happen, and it may not happen. So you got to have a lot of ideas going simultaneously. But again, where I want to go with this answer is I'm known as a creature designer. I've got some incredible things on my resume that I've been fortunate to work on. So the expectation is the stories you're writing are clearly going to be sci-fi and creature centric. So here's what happened. A few years back, I got this opportunity to be on Face Off. And when you are on a TV show, like it or not, people are becoming interested in you. Sometimes for good and sometimes for bad. People will love you for no good reason and hate you for no good reason. And that was an interesting awareness, is to be on a TV show that has a good reach. You know, I'm no Brad Pitt by any means, but I was getting attention. And that attention, like I said, was both extraordinarily positive. To hear people say such incredible things about me, and they know nothing about me, or the opposite. And I was like, this is really an interesting experience. And then some people went a bit too far. And it became dangerous a couple times, unfortunately. And I'd gotten some threats, and you know, without getting into too many details, but you know, I made some phone calls to the police, and they had advice as to how to change my lifestyle to be safe. I thought, that's awful. I'm just on a small show about creativity and positivity, and I got people that are suggesting I die and are willing to put a little bit too much energy into that thought. This is not worth it. And so that is going on while I'm still developing story ideas and things I'm passionate about. And I realized, okay, there's no, how much do you risk your life for something you believe in? This is a very important topic in the world today. And I realized some of the story ideas that I wanted to tell were about giving a voice to the disenfranchised. And I thought, because I was planning on unplugging myself from social media and reducing my footprint, if you will, of interest in the public. And I thought it through and realized, you know what? I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to be stronger than the threats. I'm going to be careful and smart about it. But I feel that what I have to do is far too important to be intimidated by the bullies out there. And so why I changed that trajectory and decided I'm going to put a little bit more effort into being on social media. And I still don't do enough, quite frankly. But it's because there's a few stories that I'm involved with that must be told. The story of, and I'm not giving away story ideas, but basically at the core of who I am, I'm an activist. And I want things to change. The tools I have to make a difference are what they are. I'm too old to change my career and become an attorney or a politician to create policy. So I've got to use what I can, which is a very small voice, very small platform that I'm trying to grow so that people love me or hate me will hear me. And I can do with it what they will. So working on getting stories out there. I'll do my sci-fi stuff if I'm given the opportunity to increase my footprint. I will do a creature feature so that I can get more people possibly interested. And it will be good, I would like to think. I'm not just going to produce crap, not intentionally. But this where my life needs to end is having succeeded at telling the story of these Tanzanian kids that I've been associated with, the ones who have albinism, black people with no skin pigmentation are ostracized. And I don't know if you know this, but it's unbelievable.
No, I'm well aware.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Getting their arms cut off for use with witchcraft.
Right.
It's insane. I would like to be a part of having made a dent in that in a positive way. Female circumcision and women burned in foreign countries, acid burns. I would like to be able to get in there and do something. The word entertainment doesn't quite fit for what it is, but to basically tell stories that make people aware and get people motivated and get more people hopefully putting the pressure on their governments to change. And we're seeing right now that people are coming together for one particular cause. And I feel like for the first time in a long time, there's going to be true action that comes from it if we don't let off the gas, because it's so easy to become complacent. Not for you, you're black. So you see it every day. You're reminded of it every day. And I've heard people say it, guess the color. Oh, I can't wait till this is all over. Me too. And I bet there's a bunch of people that are of a different skin color that feel the same way, but they don't get to let off the gas. We, people who are not in that position do not get that chance. Do not have that, and that's where the privilege comes from. It will disappear for us. And it will be over as a result. Now, I don't mean that in a negative way of sounding racist. It's what happens is the PR of this, it dissipates and it goes away, and then it's no longer a problem. And that's where we all need to be better in knowing that it's just not over. And my theory has been this: if you see it once, you now have a moral, ethical responsibility to be participatory. You're driving down the road, and this happened, and it was the moment, my cathartic moment, years ago, driving downtown LA, 25 years ago. And I was with my girlfriend in the car, and we saw a woman being attacked by some guys. And I wanted to pull over and get involved, and she was concerned, rightfully so, that if I got involved, I would have been hurt. We left it at that, and we drove home. And the conversation from her was, God, I'm so thankful that I don't have to deal with that. I'm so thankful that I get to come home to a house, et cetera, et cetera. And all of that sounds like the things you would say, but it's like, we just left somebody, I don't know, to die, maybe. We left somebody that needed us. We saw it. We know it was going on, and we walked away. This is pre-cell phone, so it was not easy. And we were in Skid Row in downtown, so it's not easy access to a phone. And anyway, that experience stuck with me. And when I was in Vietnam and Cambodia, same trip, I remember seeing how people were living. And this is not the wealthy guy coming in from the United States and seeing the poor people. Some of those people who are living the way they're living are very happy. Not saying that they wouldn't maybe want more food, more shelter, more comfort, more safety, more education. But having seen that, I no longer have, in my opinion, the right to not do something. So here's an example of what I feel I can do, because you got to be able to do the things that you talk about. It's one thing to say, God, it really needs to change. Yeah, duh. We know this. Pick something that you can change. It may not be a lot, I can't change racism. I can change my son. I can make sure that he's on path to being more mindful. And in Cambodia, I thought, I can't change their government. I can't change their regulation. I intend on making a movie here someday because it's a great place for a particular story. However, if we make a movie, if we choose to take, and I say this in the positive sense, take advantage of the tapestry that is Cambodia for a film, and we profit from that, which is the intention of a business, to get a return on your investment. So if we do that, we should give back. So at the very least, the village that we will go into, not only are we going to make a movie, but we are going to ask questions of the indigenous people of that region. What is it you guys need? Is it a water well? Is it solar power? Is it a small building erected? Any of those things need to be either in my personal budget, and I'm not a wealthy man, but at the very least, let's find a way that we attach money to the production that's spent on utilization of the people that we're going to benefit from their culture, their background, their efforts.
Right.
So that's a way of giving back in a very small way.
And the more that happens everywhere, I mean, literally here and abroad, when those who have can do it, that's an incredible amount of change that happens and can be seen, actually making a dent, you know?
Yeah. And that is why, you know, I'm grateful that you asked this question, because it gives me an opportunity not to talk about, oh, I'm going to do great things and change the world, but it gives me the opportunity to at least share with people that I love science fiction. I love creating fantasy and cool things. Absolutely love it. And I'm talking to you because I've done that.
Yeah.
But there's a way bigger picture. Way bigger. And if that is all that you do in your life, I feel and I fear that is irresponsible. If all you do is create art in your home, it's self-indulgent, and that is not what this game is about. This is about holding with the right hand someone's hand, holding with the left hand somebody's hand, helping people move forward if you are in that position, lifting people up emotionally as a teacher, giving people what you have to see them profit. By profit, I mean not always financially, but just profit in a way from it. It's a simple concept. It really is so damn simple. And I don't understand how we've gotten to this point where we're realizing that change is necessary. It's like, it has been for so long. But these recent events have made me even more committed to being outspoken and taking those risks and making product, even if it is a science fiction film. I promise you, in anything where there's a creature chasing down a guy in a spacesuit, in that story will either be misogyny, racism, colonization, all the topics. You can put that in there. Avatar is a great movie because of Jim packaging a very important message in a beautiful, beautiful aesthetic. So, you know, I learned from Jim that very thing about he makes movies to entertain, but there's got to be a message in there. And I couldn't live with myself if I just created a story that didn't have the potential. One line is all it takes for someone. And you've seen movies where one line, it makes you go,
right.
My God, of course, I've been doing it wrong.
Absolutely.
Or wow, I can do better. Or wow, I had no idea that existed. And you know, that's all any of us strive for, should.
And that's beautiful, man. I feel total confidence, especially after this conversation, to know that you are a responsible creator, because that's what I call it. That's responsible creating. And, you know, I would say, to backtrack to Avatar real quick, I'm a fan of that movie, first and foremost, just visually.
Yeah.
Blew me away visually. And to know that was...
Technically, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, and to know it was your training ground just makes it even more special for what it was to you. I'm just like, wow, that was like your gym to get more weight on. Like, whoa. So,
Was.
and I'm sure plenty of people who are going to see this are going to think just what I'm thinking. Oh, that must have been his opus. Like after all the other stuff, it's like no, I started it. Man, that's amazing. That's amazing. But you know, when you talk about the story, from an African American, from a person of direct African descent perspective, the only frustration that most of us had with Avatar, who are awake to certain tropes that happen in Hollywood, was the whole, you know, Dances with Wolves thing, you know, which another beautiful movie, but, you know, the Great White Hope that saves the day,
Yes.
in an alien form. And it's just like, by the time I woke up to that being part of the script, I was like, oh, because I was loving it. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna let y'all, it's like we have to almost create a filter every time we go to see a movie because we know it's in there somehow. When on certain levels with certain level of films, it just happens, and we're sitting there having to, okay, how am I gonna digest this one? It's, you know, we'd be on here for another 2 hours, but it's kind of like my love-hate relationship with the Klingons. Like as a Trekkie, I would love to play a Klingon in makeup you designed. I would freaking love that. I mean, I know you seen I did my own little quick Photoshop thing. Yeah, and you dug it. So man, that meant everything to get your little. I like that. I was like, yay. But you know, because again, it's the relationship of artists seeing each other's approach, and I can tell you have a similar approach to the way I approach my work. So yeah, as long as people understand the power of what can be done when you not only have an amazing, cool looking concept, but you actually dig into real culture. You actually ask the people who are of the culture. That's why the third highest grossing domestic film in U.S. history, Black Panther, is what it was. Because for two well-meaning, amazing liberal Jews to create Stan Lee and Kirby to create Black Panther, but then years later, after all these different writers and other artists, visual artists, grab that concept and build it 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 until boom, you know, you get the ultimate director, you get the ultimate executive producer, you get this incredible black cat. I mean, all these people I'm talking about are all black, and they're all aware of themselves. They're not, you know, just, oh, I'm gonna do this, it's another good check. No, we're gonna go in on this. We're gonna find out who we are for whatever we don't know already, and we're gonna bring it. We're going to South Africa. We're going to countries in Africa. We're going to bring all the pieces of all these multiple 54 countries, as much as we can, into this fantasy world and make it real. That's why it's amazing. It's part of humanity. That's why, you know, and that's why even when we're hurting, those who are aware of what it is to be human wake up. So when I say my Neville brother, I mean it. I wish I was there to give you this right here. We do this.
I feel it. I feel it. Thank you.
Yeah, man, and I appreciate this, for real.
Same here. I would love to have a sidebar conversation with you at some point about the Tanzanian story, because it is about, it's, you know, it's one of the many important things to deal with. Mm-hmm. But as a Caucasian guy writing a story about African people, the Great White Hope is an intended part of it, but it needs to be from the most appropriate perspective, and that would be through the lens of a black man specifically. So at some point, it'd be great to chat with you about it and see if there's a collaboration there of developing it so that it tells the right story. Anyhow, I put it out there to you that it'd be great. I like you. I've always liked you, and it would be nice if I don't get to put a Klingon forehead on you at some point. This would be a nice primer for other great things down the road.
So what you're really saying is, in front of all the people who are going to see this, we need to get off here right now and talk some business.
Pretty much. That is what I'm saying.
For sure. Ladies and gentlemen, Neville Page, ONYXCON Exclusive. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Joseph. It's been a real treat.
Stay on. We're going to keep talking. I'm just cutting it off for the people. Okay.